Hi, I'm Doug Wechsler. I'm a photographer, naturalist, and children's book author. For 28 years, I worked at the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia, where I was director of Vireo, a worldwide collection of bird photographs, which is how I got involved in the story of discovery I'm about to relate to you. The story takes place in Ecuador, which straddles the equator in South America. 1997 was a year of great consequence. Hong Kong was returned to the People's Republic of China. Madeleine Albright became the first female U.S. Secretary of State, and Mike Tyson chomped off part of Evander Holyfield's ear. But for birders, the big event of the year was the discovery by Robert Ridgely, John Moore, and Lelis Navarrete. These three were experts in the bird calls of Ecuador, but when they heard the strange hooting far down the trail, none of them recognized the bird. When they finally got close to the source, Bob Ridgely was able to record the bird and play it back. The pair of antpittas came bounding out onto the trail. Bob uttered something unrepeatable. The species of antpitta was new to science. It had never been seen by a birder or a scientist. Bob didn't have his camera, but he returned 2 days later and got a photo of the bird skulking in the underbrush. Bob returned to the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia excited and showed me a picture of the bird. He immediately started to organize a small expedition to study it. And who knows, maybe we might find some more new birds in that area. In January of 1998, we gathered in Quito to prepare for the expedition. But before we even left, Nigel Simpson, who funded it, quietly said he would put up money to protect the bird. We camped out near where the Trail of Discovery met the highway. We put up mist nets to catch the mystery bird, and I set up a bird photography tent. It took about a week, but we finally managed to capture the bird. Someone went to get Nigel so that he could hold the bird that he offered to protect. When they brought the antpitta to me, I put it in the tent and everyone crowded around. This made both me and the bird nervous, but eventually I was able to get some shots. Suddenly, though, the bird saw that a zipper in the tent was open. It shot up, perched on top of the tent for an instant, then vanished. I felt terrible, to put it politely. Nigel did not get to hold the bird. Though they didn't come down hard on me at the time, my friends have still not stopped ribbing me about the event. While we were working in camp, some guys came up the trail with horses and mules, hauling boards they had cut in the forest. Bob played the tape of the bird for them and asked them what it was. One responded, "Es un hocotoco." It's a hocotoco. And that's how the bird got its name. They weren't the only ones cutting the forest. There was much clearing in the forest for cow pastures like this one. When we returned to Quito from the field, we sat down to discuss what to do to protect the new species. It was decided the best course of action would be to set up a foundation. Within a few months, the Hocotoco Conservation Foundation was established, with Francisco Pancho Sornosa as its executive director. Pancho had been working with us on bird studies in Ecuador for the previous decade. Within a year of the discovery, Pancho had purchased the first parcels of land and the Tapichalaka Reserve became a reality. It's located in southern Ecuador in the Zamora Chinchipe province. The reserve now extends from 6,000 feet to 11,000 feet elevation. At the lower end, subtropical forest has its characteristic silvery leafed cecropia trees. Tapichalaka now includes more than 10,000 acres. The views from the trail vistas are spectacular. The Hocotoco antpitta lives in the middle elevations of the reserve. It is truly a rare bird. There have been very few sightings outside of Tapichalaka Reserve. Hocotocos are ground dwellers. They rarely fly more than a few meters at a time. They eat large beetles, snails, small frogs, and earthworms. When the reserve was first established, the only way to see a hocotoco was to call it out of the dense understory with a recording of its voice. With many birders coming to see this charismatic bird, there was too much disturbance from this playback. So the foundation sent Franco Ramirez, one of the forest guards, to northern Ecuador to learn techniques from Angel Paz. Angel Paz had figured out how to have antpitters come into a feeding station, luring them in with earthworms. Here you see Franco's brother Ramiro at Tapichalaka's feeding station. Now tourists can go every day at 7 a.m. and see the local acclimated pair without disturbing them. Aside from hokotokos, the reserve harbors hundreds of other species of birds. The hooded mountain tanager is the largest tanager in the world and is one of the many beautiful tanagers on the reserve. Bearded guans are rare outside the reserve, but they arrive at the feeder every day to refuel. Wax palms are a critical element for another rare species on the reserve. Golden plume parakeets nest almost exclusively on the trunks of dead palms. Unfortunately, too many young palms were killed by people seeking leaves for Palm Sunday celebrations. Working with the church and local government, the foundation has helped to reduce this harvest. Golden plume parakeets nest in pairs and in small groups in cavities in standing dead palm trunks. Here they are inspecting a potential nest site at the beginning of the breeding season. To make up for the loss of potential nest sites and to augment the parakeet population, Hokotoko Foundation has instituted a very successful nest box program for the golden plume parakeets. Another group of birds that is very successful on the reserve are the hummingbirds. Hummingbirds reach their highest diversity in the Andes. A couple of the local gems are the chestnut-breasted coronet and the amethyst-throated sun angel. Flowers in the Andes have co-evolved with the hummingbirds, so many of the flowers are bright red, and this provides a clear signal to the hummingbirds. Get your nectar here. Aside from birds, Tapichalaka protects a high diversity of other animals. Espada's robber frog lays its eggs on land and goes through the tadpole stage within the egg. When evening falls, long-tongued bats empty out the hummingbird feeders. A few visitors have a lucky encounter with a mountain coati. This member of the raccoon family looks very different from the more familiar lowland coatis. Just to give you an idea of how rich the diversity of the reserve is and how much is still left to discover, in a visit to the reserve by botanist David Neal and his class on a couple of rainy days in 2019, they discovered 4 new species of trees just in the family Aureliaceae. To help support the reserve, give it a home base, and make it accessible to tourists, the foundation built Casa Simpson, named after Nigel Simpson, whose donation got the foundation started. If you visit the lodge, you'll be well fed. The reserve is particularly popular with birders, but anybody with an interest in nature will find plenty to enjoy. As I mentioned earlier, when Tapichalaka was established, large areas had been turned into pasture. Hokotoko Foundation has a major reforestation program. Now, seeds that are collected from local forest trees are planted in the nursery. In order to plant the young trees, first the reforestation team has to cut down the grass in the pasture and then keep that grass down while the young trees grow above the level of the grass. 3 years later, the saplings look like this. 10 years later, the canopy is starting to close and the grasses will soon be shaded out. The reserve doesn't just protect the fauna and flora, it also protects the watershed. In fact, Hokotoko has done such a good job managing its land that the local town, Valladolid, has asked Hokotoko to help it manage its watershed. Students from that town also come to the reserve to learn about nature. The quick success in establishing Tapichalaka Reserve to conserve the Hokotoko antpitta and its habitat inspired the foundation to look elsewhere at other endangered species. Soon the foundation was at work to protect the El Oro parakeet, which was also discovered by Robert Ridgely. The El Oro parakeet is only found in 2 provinces in southwestern Ecuador and only in a limited elevation range. The reserve set aside for this parakeet, Buenaventura, now extends from 1,300 feet to 4,750 feet elevation, from tropical forest to cloud forest. Extensive research and a nest box program similar to that of Tapichalaka has increased the population by 30% in the last decade. Each nesting pair of El Oro parakeets has several helpers that assist in raising that pair's young. In one nest box, there may be as many as 12 birds. The Umbrella Bird Lodge at Buenaventura attracts many local visitors as well as tourists from afar. Its namesake, the long-wattled umbrella bird, is arguably the most spectacular bird on the reserve. In its courtship display, the male long-wattled umbrella bird extends that wattle, spreads out the feathers, and makes a foghorn-like sound. Another characteristic sound of Buenaventura is the yelping of the yellow-throated toucan. In its more than 2 decades of work, the Hokotoko Foundation has expanded its system of bird reserves to protect rare birds throughout the country. It currently manages 16 reserves. Each one has as its centerpiece the protection of a rare bird or group of birds, but in truth, they all protect vital ecosystems. Let's take a very quick look at a few other reserves. Tesoro Escondido and Cananday Reserve in the northwest both protect very wet lowland forest in the highly endangered Choco ecosystem. These 2 reserves protect some beautiful primary forest, as well as several rare regional endemic birds and other organisms, such as this Plumbeous forest falcon, the scarlet-breasted dacnus, and the Choco poorwill. Remaining primary forest is still being cut nearby, and expanding these reserves is a conservation priority for Hokotoko. At the other extreme are the dry forests of the Tumbesian ecoregion of southwestern Ecuador. This forest is protected in the Jorupe Reserve. It's home to magnificent ceiba trees and many regional endemics like this white-tailed jay, the ochre-bellied dove, and the pale-browed tinamou. Visitors to Ecuador's capital, Quito, can take a 2-hour side trip to the magnificent Chacana Reserve. On these impressive cliffs, condors roost by the dozens. This is the most important refuge for Andean condors in Ecuador. It's also the best place in the country to see the elusive spectacled bear, the only bear in South America. All told, the Hokotoko Foundation reserves now exceed 50,000 acres and are home to nearly 1,000 species of birds. The discovery of one bird, the Hokotoko antpitta, set in motion an incredible conservation effort that is protecting some of the finest natural heritage of Ecuador and of the world. In conclusion, I would like to recognize the hardworking Hokotoko staff who have made all of this possible.